Nobody ever asked if you were okay, because you were always the one asking everyone else. You were the one who showed up, the one who held it together when everything fell apart, the one people called when they had no one else to call, and you answered every time. But here is the question nobody ever thought to ask you. Who do you call? You learned to keep quiet before you even knew what silence was. Maybe it started with a slammed door, a parent's sigh, or the way worry filled the house like smoke. You saw what happened when feelings spilled over, how it made things worse, not better. So you tucked your own feelings away deep down, where nobody could trip over them. You became the calm in the storm, the one who never made a scene. But that skill, staying strong, swallowing pain, came at a cost your body remembers, even when your mind tries to forget. University of Texas researchers tracked what happens inside people who habitually suppress their emotions. Their study followed college students for 6 months, measuring stress hormones and heart rhythms. Those who kept their feelings hidden had higher spikes in cortisol, the stress hormone that quietly wears down your immune system. Their heart rate variability, the body's signal for resilience, dropped. The more you push feelings down, the harder your body works to keep the mask in place. You might not even notice it anymore. When someone asks how you are, you say, "I'm fine," before you even check in with yourself. Naming what you feel gets harder over time. The language for sadness or fear or even joy fades, replaced by a numbness that feels safer. This isn't just personality, it's a survival strategy. A child learns quickly. If showing pain makes things worse, then silence is protection. But silence has a price. Over years, it becomes harder to know what you need, harder to ask for help, harder to let anyone in. Being strong isn't the problem. The problem is when strength becomes the only identity you're allowed to have. If you've spent your life holding it together for everyone else, it's no wonder you struggle to let yourself fall apart. And if this pattern has built a wall between you and the people you love, it might be time for more than just a video. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone see what's underneath the armor. You learned to scan every room for what needed fixing before you even knew the word for responsibility. When the adults in your life fell apart, you stepped in, sometimes with a joke, sometimes with a clean kitchen, always with the hope that if you just manage things well enough, everything might stay together. This is more than being helpful. Psychologists call it parentification, when a child is pushed, quietly or loudly, into the role of caretaker for their own family. Sometimes it is emotional, listening to a parent's worries, soothing their pain, becoming their confidant. Sometimes it is practical, cooking, cleaning, making sure siblings get to school. Either way, the line between child and adult blurs until you can't remember which side you're supposed to be on. The research is clear. Gregory Yurkovich, a pioneer in the field, found that parentified children don't just carry chores, they carry the weight of adult responsibility long after childhood ends. Nicole Chase's surveys of teens showed that the more a child took on these roles, the more likely they were to feel anxious, even years later. In a study tracking 400 kids into adulthood, those who had to take care of parents or siblings were twice as likely to struggle with depression by age 22. The pattern doesn't fade, it hardens. You grow up believing your value lies in being useful, in holding everything together, in never needing too much yourself. Maybe you recognize the signs. You're the friend who remembers birthdays, the coworker who stays late, the partner who anticipates every need before it is spoken. You don't just help, you rescue. But underneath the competence, there's a cost. Hooper and colleagues found that emotional parentification, being the family's therapist, leaves a mark on self-esteem. The more you learn to disappear behind your usefulness, the harder it becomes to ask for comfort, rest, or care. Burnout isn't just a risk, it's almost inevitable when your identity is built on never letting anyone down. This isn't about blaming families or pathologizing kindness. It's about naming what happens when love gets tangled up with duty, and when being strong becomes the only way you know how to belong. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, you're not alone. And if the pattern has started to cost you more than it gives, it might be time to ask, who takes care of you when you're always the one holding everyone else up? You don't just feel tired, you feel guilty for feeling tired. Midnight finds you staring at the ceiling, replaying the day, wondering why you can't just keep going like everyone expects. The voice in your head is merciless. If you were really strong, you would not need a break. If you stop, everything falls apart. So you push through again and again until your body aches and your mind goes numb. Rest isn't relief, it is a reminder that you have failed to be enough. This isn't laziness, it is the cost of being the one who holds it all together. Psychologist Kristin Neff calls it a self-compassion gap. Her research shows that people who score low on the self-compassion scale are much harder on themselves when they struggle. In her studies, higher self-compassion scores predict less self-criticism and more resilience. But for people like you, self-kindness feels almost dangerous. You know how to care for others. Turning that gentleness inward feels selfish, even shameful. Maybe you recognize the moment when you collapse behind a locked door, finally letting your hands shake, your breath catch. But even then, you're already planning how to get back up. The world rewards your strength, but never sees the cost. And when exhaustion brings shame, loneliness is never far behind. You can be surrounded by people who love you and still feel like you're on the outside looking in. You're the one everyone leans on, the one who always has the right words or the steady hands. But when the party ends, or the room empties out, you notice the ache that never quite leaves. It's the loneliness that comes from being needed, but never truly seen. Brené Brown's research cuts right to the heart of this. Vulnerability is what builds belonging, not perfection, not competence, not holding it all together. In her studies, people who risked showing their struggles reported stronger connections, deeper intimacy, and a sense of being understood. The irony is brutal. By hiding your pain to protect others, you end up walling yourself off from the very closeness you crave. Maybe you know the feeling. You're at a table full of friends, but your real story stays locked behind your smile. You listen, you reassure, you make sure everyone else is okay. But your own loneliness grows, invisible and heavy. If you've reached the point where this pattern is keeping you from real intimacy or making it hard to ask for help, it might be time to reach out for professional support. If you ever feel unsafe, call or text 988 for help. You don't have to do this alone. The people who love you don't need you to be strong. They need you to be real. You swallow the words before they ever reach your lips. You rehearse the ask in your head, "Can you help me?" But it dies in your throat. The fear isn't just that you'll be rejected, it's that your need will make someone else's life harder. That you'll tip the balance, become the problem, the weight they didn't sign up to carry. So you don't ask. You wait for someone to notice, but you make it impossible for them to see. You say, "I'm just tired." You say, "Don't worry about me." Inside, you're screaming for someone to offer comfort without you having to request it. Psychologists have a name for this: perceived burdensomeness. Thomas Joyner's research shows that when people believe their existence is a burden, the risk goes far beyond sadness. In clinical studies, perceived burdensomeness predicts suicidal thoughts even more strongly than depression does. In a meta-analysis of over 1,000 participants, the effect size was not small. Cohen's d hovered around 0.7, a warning bell for anyone who thinks being strong is just a harmless trait. It's not just theory. In real life, people who carry this fear will skip doctor's appointments, hide pain, refuse help, all to avoid burdening others. Caregivers, too, are more likely to feel depressed and dissatisfied when they believe their needs weigh others down. The more you believe your pain is a problem for others, the more you pull away. Silence deepens, the loneliness grows teeth. If you recognize yourself here, if you've ever wanted to ask for help but couldn't bear the thought of being a burden, know that this is not weakness. It's a learned survival strategy. But left unchecked, it can become dangerous. If you ever feel unsafe with your thoughts, call or text 988. You matter, even when you can't see it. You are not a burden. Here's the truth. Being strong isn't the problem. The problem is when strength becomes the only identity you are allowed to have. As psychologists like Thomas Joyner warn, perceived burdensomeness warps connection. You deserve to be seen, messy, tired, real. If that's hard, reach for help. Your humanity matters. Share your story below.